The Great Hall of the Galactic Unity Council stretched wider than most cities. 12 species sat in their floating chairs, arranged in a circle that was supposed to mean equality. But Ambassador Taiwu had learned long ago that the circle was a lie. Some voices mattered. Others did not. He was 73 years old. His hair had turned white decades ago, and his hand shook slightly when he held his documents. For 40 years he had stood in this chamber and spoken for humanity. For 40 years the council had nodded politely and done nothing. Today was no different. The human colonies on the outer rim require assistance, Taiwu said. His voice was calm. He had stopped feeling anger years ago. Now there was only tiredness. 3 worlds face crop failure. We request access to the emergency seed reserves. Counselor Wren of the Villani barely looked up from her personal screen. She was tall and thin, with skin like white marble and eyes that held no warmth. The reserves are allocated for priority species, she said. Your colonies knew the risks when they settled those worlds. We have contributed to those reserves for 200 years, Taiwu replied, and your contribution is noted. High Arbiter Dole raised one of his 4 hands, in a gesture that meant the discussion was over. He was ancient, even by the long-lived standards of his species. His gray skin hung loose on his frame, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. The council will review the request at the next session. The next session was 8 months away. The colonies would starve in 4. Taiwu looked around the circle. The Thren representative was cleaning his claws. The core ambassador was already discussing something else with her aide. The Naylori scholar was reading a book. Nobody cared. Nobody had ever cared. He thought about arguing. He thought about shouting, about demanding justice, about reminding them of every time humanity had helped without asking for anything in return. But he had done all of that before. Many times. Nothing changed, so Ambassador Taiwu did something he had never done in 40 years of service. He closed his folder. He stood up straight, and he bowed once, deeply, to the council that had ignored his people for 2 centuries. Then he walked out. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody even noticed until he was gone. Captain Yuna was waiting outside the chamber. She was young, barely 40, with sharp eyes, in a military uniform that she wore like armor. She commanded the diplomatic vessel that had brought Taiwu here, a ship called the Final Word. How did it go? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The same as always, Taiwu said. He kept walking toward the docking bay. Send the signal. Yuna stopped. Sir? Are you certain? Once we begin, there is no going back. The old ambassador paused. He looked back at the great doors of the council chamber, doors that had never truly opened for his people. We have given them 200 years, he said quietly. We have built their stations. We have healed their sick. We have fought their wars and carried their cargo and solved their problems, and they look at us like we are furniture. Useful but unremarkable. He turned to face Yuna. I am tired, Captain. Our people are tired. Let them see what the galaxy looks like without the furniture. Yuna nodded slowly. She pulled out her communicator and spoke 3 words that would change history. Begin Operation Horizon. Across human space, the message spread at faster than light speed. On 1,000 worlds, in 10,000 stations, humanity received the order they had prepared for but hoped never to use. They began to leave. It was not a violent exit. There were no explosions, no attacks, no declarations of war. Human workers simply finished their shifts and did not return. Human ships completed their deliveries and flew home. Human doctors transferred their patients to alien colleagues and packed their bags. On the great trading station of Nexus Prime, human merchants closed their shops. They left the keys with station security and walked to their ships without looking back. The alien shopkeepers watched in confusion. Humans had been there for so long that nobody remembered a time without them. On the border worlds, human military vessels withdrew from patrol routes they had guarded for centuries. They sent polite notices to their allied commanders. Thank you for your service alongside us. We wish you well. Then they were gone. In the research centers, human scientists uploaded their final reports and erased their personal files. They left their experiments in careful order, with detailed notes for whoever might continue the work. Most of that work would never be continued. Nobody else knew how. The communication arrays went dark one by one. Human frequencies fell silent. The network that had connected humanity to the galaxy for 200 years simply stopped. 3 days after Taiwu walked out of the council chamber, the last human vessel crossed into human space. The borders sealed behind it. Defense platforms activated. Warning buoys broadcast a simple message in 1,000 languages. Human space is closed. Do not enter. High Arbiter Dole received the final transmission personally. It arrived on his private channel, marked urgent. He almost ignored it. The message was from Ambassador Taiwu. The old man stood in what looked like a small apartment, probably on some human colony world. He wore simple clothes instead of his diplomatic robes. He looked more at peace than Dole had ever seen him. "High Arbiter," Taiwu said. "I wanted to thank you personally. For 40 years you told us that the galaxy did not need humanity. You told us that our concerns were small, our contributions unremarkable, our voices unimportant. We have decided to believe you," he smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was something else in it. Something that made Dole uncomfortable. "You never needed us," Taiwu continued. "We believe you. So we are leaving. All of us, everywhere. We will not fight you. We will not threaten you. We will simply stop. Stop working. Stop helping. Stop asking to be heard." The old ambassador bowed one final time. "Goodbye, High Arbiter. We wish you well." The transmission ended. Dole sat in silence for a long moment. Then he called his assistant. "Get me a report on human activities across council space," he ordered. "I want to know what they do for us." The report took 3 days to compile. When Dole finished reading it, his 4 hands were trembling. Humans were involved in everything. They ran 40% of all shipping. They maintained 60% of all station systems. They had designed the algorithms that controlled the military, the formulas that produced medicine, the protocols that kept the communication networks functioning, and all of them were gone. Dole looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was waiting in silence. And for the first time in his very long life, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council felt afraid. 6 months passed. The galaxy told itself that everything was fine. Trader Hannah had stayed behind when the others left. She had her reasons. A debt to pay. A friend to help. She told herself it would only be a few weeks. But the weeks became months. And now she was stuck on Trading Station 12 with no way home. She sat in a small cafe and watched the aliens around her. They moved through their days like nothing had changed. They bought and sold. They argued and laughed. They did not see what Hannah saw. The shelves in the shops were getting empty. "The shipments are late again," the cafe owner complained. He was a short, round Nauri with kind eyes. "Third time this month. I don't understand. The shipping companies always delivered on time before." Hannah understood. Those shipping companies had been run by humans. The new ones, the alien replacements, did not know the routes. They did not know the schedules. They did not know how to balance cargo weight for fuel efficiency, or how to negotiate with dock workers, or how to fix an engine. In the middle of nowhere with nothing but spare parts and creativity, humans had done that work for 200 years. Nobody had noticed. Now they were gone, and the supplies were not coming. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Koss of the Thren Dominion was facing a different problem. His fleet was dying. The Thren were warriors. They had built the most powerful military in the known galaxy, with ships that could adapt to any enemy and weapons that could destroy whole worlds. They were feared by everyone, but their ships would not work. "The combat algorithms are degrading," his chief engineer reported. The engineer was scared. Koss could smell it. They were designed by human programmers. "We need updates, patches, maintenance codes. Without them, the systems lose efficiency every day." "And fix them," Koss growled. "We cannot, Admiral. We do not understand how they work. The humans built them to be self-improving. The code is so complex that even our best programmers cannot read it. Ka stared at his fleet through the window of his command ship. 100 vessels hung in space, the pride of the Thren Dominion. And they were becoming useless, because some quiet little humans had written programs that nobody else could understand. He had laughed at humans once, called them soft, called them weak. He was not laughing now, in the council chamber. The arguments were getting louder. The Villani and the core hegemony had been rivals for centuries. They argued over borders, over resources, over ancient insults that nobody remembered anymore. But the arguments had always stayed as arguments. Someone always stepped in to calm things down. Someone always found a compromise. That someone had always been human. "Your ships violated our space," the core ambassador shouted. Her scales were bright red with anger. "This is an act of war. Your definition of your space is absurd," Counselor Wren replied. Her voice was cold, but her hands were shaking. "Those trade routes have been neutral for centuries. They were neutral because the humans managed them. The humans are gone. The routes belong to whoever can hold them." High Arbiter Dole tried to intervene. "Please, we must find a peaceful solution." "Then find one," the core ambassador snapped. "You are the High Arbiter. Arbitrate." But Dole did not know how. He had never actually negotiated a peace. He had only approved the agreements that human diplomats had created. He had signed his name to their work and taken credit for their success. Now there was no one to do the work, and he did not know where to begin. In a quiet research station on the edge of known space, Scholar Vey was making a discovery that would keep her awake for weeks. Vey was Nalori, a species known for their love of knowledge. She had spent her life studying other cultures, trying to understand what made each species unique. For the last 10 years, she had studied humans. Most of her colleagues thought it was a waste of time. Humans were boring, they said. Unremarkable. Nothing special. Vey had never agreed. She had seen something in the humans that others missed. A quiet strength. A stubborn kindness. A willingness to do hard work without asking for praise. Now she was going through old records, trying to understand what humanity had actually done for the galaxy. The more she looked, the more afraid she became. Humans had designed the water recycling systems on 300 stations. Humans had created the translation software that let different species understand each other. Humans had mapped the safe routes through the dangerous space between stars. They had done all of this without being asked, without being thanked, without being noticed, and they had left. Vey called High Arbiter Dole that night. "We have made a terrible mistake," she said. "The humans were not unremarkable. They were invisible. They did all the work that nobody else wanted to do, and we never saw them doing it. We were standing on their shoulders, and we called them small." Dole was quiet for a long moment. "What do we do now?" "I do not know," Vey admitted. "But I think we need to start by understanding what we have lost." Back on Trading Station 12, the lights went out. Hannah was in her small rented room when it happened. One moment, everything was normal. The next, darkness and silence. The constant hum of the station systems, a sound so familiar that nobody noticed it anymore, was gone. She found her emergency light and made her way to the main corridor. Other residents were there, confused and scared. The Knoll Ree Cafe owner was among them. "What is happening?" he asked. "Life support failure," someone said. "The backup systems are not responding." Hannah knew why. The backup systems had been installed by human engineers. They required maintenance codes that only humans had. Without those codes, the systems were locked. And without the systems, the station would run out of air in 6 hours. She could fix it. She had the training. She had the knowledge. But she also had the silent order from home: do not help. Let them learn. The cafe owner grabbed her arm. "Hannah, please. You know machines? Can you help us?" She looked at his kind eyes. She looked at the families huddled in the corridor, the children crying, the old people sitting quietly and waiting to die. They were not the council. They were not the ones who had ignored humanity. They were just ordinary people who had never done anything wrong. But her people had been ignored for 200 years. Her people had been told they did not matter. If she helped now, would it change anything? Or would they go back to ignoring humans as soon as the crisis passed? Hannah closed her eyes. She thought about Ambassador Tai Wu, walking out of the council chamber with dignity and grace. She thought about the message he had sent. Let them see what the galaxy looks like without us. I am sorry, she whispered. I am not supposed to be here. None of us are. Not anymore. She walked back to her room and sealed the door. 6 hours later, a Thren patrol ship arrived and evacuated the station. 200 people had died from the air shortage. The Nalori Cafe owner was not among the dead. But when Hannah passed him on the rescue ship, he looked at her with eyes full of confusion and hurt. She turned away and said nothing. In human space, General Sujin watched the reports come in. Station failures. Supply shortages. Border conflicts. The galaxy was starting to crack. They are finally learning, she said to her aide. The question is whether they will learn fast enough. Her aide looked at the star map, at all the places where things were going wrong. And if they do not, Sujin's face was hard. Then they burn, and we watch. 1 year after humanity left, the galaxy was dying. High Arbiter Dole stood at his window and watched the emergency ships flying past. There were so many of them now. Refugee vessels from fallen worlds, military ships rushing to new conflicts, medical transports that arrived too late to save anyone. He was older than he had been a year ago. Not just in time, but in spirit. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him every day. He had dismissed humanity. He had ignored their pleas. And now the galaxy was paying the price. His assistant entered the room. Hi, Arbiter. The council is waiting. They are always waiting, Dole said. What is it today? The rim barrier has fallen. The swarm is advancing. Dole closed his eyes. The devouring swarm. That was what they called the creatures that lived in the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. They were not intelligent, not in any way that other species understood. They were simply hungry. They ate everything, planets, ships, people. They had been held back for 300 years by the rim barrier. A network of defense stations and weapons platforms. Human fleets had guarded that barrier. Human engineers had maintained it. Nobody had known. Nobody had asked. How fast are they moving? Dole asked. They will reach the Villani homeworld in 6 months. 6 months. The Villani would be extinct in 6 months. And after them, the core. And after them, everyone else. Dole walked to the council chamber with heavy steps. The other counselors were already arguing. They argued about everything now. Who was to blame? What to do? How to survive? The arguments never led anywhere. He must attack the swarm directly, Admiral Koss demanded. He had come personally, leaving his broken fleet behind. A combined assault from all our forces? Your forces cannot even fly straight, Counselor Wren snapped. She was thinner than before. Hunger was spreading across Villani space. What good are ships that shoot their own allies? At least we have ships. Your people cannot even defend yourselves, because we trusted the humans to do it for us. We all did. And you laughed at them just as much as anyone. Enough, Dole said. His voice was tired. Fighting each other will not save us. Then what will? The Corps ambassador asked. She was not angry anymore. She was afraid. They all were. We have tried everything. We cannot replicate their technology. We cannot understand their systems. We cannot do what they did. In the silence that followed, Prince Ayler stood up. He was young, barely an adult by Villani standards. His father had died in the first swarm attack, and now he represented his people on the council. He had spent the last 3 months reading old records, trying to understand how they had reached this point. I found something, he said. In the archives. I think you all need to see it. He activated the display in the center of the chamber. Numbers appeared. Charts. Records. 200 years of data. These are all the proposals that humanity submitted to this council, Ayler said. Every idea. Every request. Every suggestion. There are more than 2,000 of them. The counselors looked at the data. Some of them shifted uncomfortably, and here Ayler continued, are the ones that were approved. He pressed a button. The display changed. The number was 0. In 200 years, Ayler said, we did not approve a single human proposal. Not one. They asked for resources. We said no. They asked for representation. We said no. They asked for respect. We said no. His voice was shaking now. They asked to be heard. We did not even listen. Counselor Wren spoke quietly. We thought they were beneath us. They were so... ordinary. No special abilities. No great technology. Just small, soft creatures who worked hard and complained little. They never complained, Scholar Vey said. She had been invited to this session as an expert on human culture. That is what we missed. They did not complain because they believed that good work would speak for itself. They thought that if they helped enough, we would eventually see their value. She paused. They were wrong. The chamber was silent. High Arbiter Dole made a decision. Open a channel, he said. All frequencies. Maximum power. I want every human in the galaxy to hear this. His assistant hesitated. High Arbiter, they have not responded to any of our messages. Then we will keep sending them until they do. The channel opened. Dole stood in front of the camera and spoke. People of humanity, this is High Arbiter Dole of the Galactic Unity Council. I am speaking to you not as a leader, but as someone who has failed. We failed you. For 200 years you gave us everything. Your labor, your knowledge, your protection. And we gave you nothing in return. We ignored you. We dismissed you. We treated you as less than you are. He paused. His old hands were trembling. We were wrong. We see that now. The galaxy is falling apart without you, and we finally understand what we lost. You were not beneath us. You were carrying us. And we were too blind and proud to see it. Tears were forming in his ancient eyes. Please, come back. Help us. We will give you whatever you want. Equal voice. Full partnership. Anything. Just please do not let the galaxy die because of our foolishness. He bowed his head. We beg you. The message went out across the stars. It reached human space and passed through the border defenses. It was heard on every human world, every human home, and humanity answered with silence. In her quarters on the border station, General Sujin watched the message with a cold expression. Around her, other human officers were watching too. Some of them were crying. Some were angry. Some were simply tired. They're begging, her aide said. Should we respond? Sujin reached out and turned off the display. The High Arbiter's pleading face disappeared. They're finally listening, she said. Too bad we are done talking. On a small colony world far from the border, Elder Taiwu watched the same message. He was retired now, living in a simple house with a garden that he tended every day. His hands no longer shook. The tiredness in his eyes had faded. His granddaughter sat beside him. She was 12 years old, born after the withdrawal. She had never seen an alien, never been ignored by the council, never felt the weight of being invisible. Grandfather, she said, why did you leave them? Taiwu thought about the question for a long moment. Because I wanted them to understand, he said finally. When someone keeps hurting you and they do not even realize they are doing it, sometimes the only way to make them see is to walk away. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Oh, do you think they understand now? Taiwu looked at the blank screen where the High Arbiter's face had been. I think they are beginning to. But understanding is not enough. They have to change. And change is hard. It takes time. Will we ever go back? The old man smiled. It was the same sad smile he had worn in his final message to the council a year ago in a different life. That depends on them, he said, and on us. On what kind of people we want to be. Outside, the stars were shining. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was burning. And humanity was watching, waiting, deciding. The silence continued. 3 years after humanity left, the galaxy had become a graveyard. Commander Jihos stood on the observation deck of Border Station 7 and watched the ships coming. There were dozens of them today. Small ships, damaged ships, ships held together by hope and desperation. Alien refugees fleeing the collapse of everything they had known. They came to the human border because there was nowhere else to go. Another wave, his lieutenant reported. Mostly Volani this time. Some Nalar? A few core, how many? About 3,000. Many are injured. Many are children. Jiho looked at the ships floating outside the border markers. They could not enter human space. The defense platforms would destroy anything that crossed without permission. But they could wait, beg, and hope. His orders were clear. The border stays closed. No exceptions. But the orders did not tell him what to do about the faces he could see through the windows of those ships. The mothers holding their children, the old ones who had accepted that they would die, the young ones who still believed that someone would help them. "Sir," his lieutenant said, "one of the ships is hailing us. A small transport. They say they have a counselor aboard." Jiho frowned. "A counselor?" "Counselor Wren of the Volani. She is requesting permission to approach, alone, unarmed." Counselor Wren. Jiho remembered that name from the history briefings. She had been one of the loudest voices against humanity in the old council. She had called humans unremarkable, unnecessary, a minor species that contributed nothing of value. "Let her come," he said. The small shuttle crossed the border alone. It docked at the station, and Counselor Wren walked out with nothing but the clothes she wore. She was thin, much thinner than the images in the archives. Her white skin had turned gray, and her eyes were hollow. Jiho met her in the docking bay. He did not offer a greeting. He did not bow. He simply stood there and waited. "Commander," Wren said. Her voice was hoarse. "Thank you for seeing me. I almost didn't. You know who I am?" "No, my grandmother was a diplomat. She served under Ambassador Taiwu for 20 years. She used to tell me about the council meetings, about how the aliens would talk over the human representatives, how they would laugh at human proposals, how they would treat my people like we were invisible." He paused. "She mentioned you specifically. She said you were the worst of them all." Wren did not look away. She was right. The answer surprised Jiho. He had expected excuses, arguments, the arrogance that the old records described. But the woman standing before him seemed broken in a way that went beyond physical hunger. "Why are you here?" he asked. "To apologize? And to deliver this?" She held out a small data crystal. The final session of the Galactic Council. Every remaining species voted together for the first time in history. They voted to offer humanity full partnership, equal voice, a formal apology written into galactic law. Jiho took the crystal but did not look at it. "Why now? Why after 3 years of silence?" "Because we finally understand." Wren's voice cracked. "We lost everything. The Thren Dominion collapsed. The core hegemony is gone. My people..." She stopped, struggling to continue. "My people are almost extinct. The swarm took our homeworld. We have nothing left, and you think we should save you? After everything you did?" "No." Wren shook her head. "I do not think you should. I think we deserve what has happened to us. We were cruel and blind and proud. We treated your people like tools, and when the tools walked away, we broke." She looked at him directly. "But I am not here for myself. I am here for the children on those ships. They did not choose to be born into a dying galaxy. They did not ignore your people or dismiss your worth. They are innocent." Jiho was silent. "I know you cannot let us in," Wren continued. "I know your orders. I am not asking you to break them. I am only asking you to listen. And perhaps to tell your leaders what I have said. Maybe it will change nothing. But I had to try." For a long moment, Jiho said nothing. Then he turned to his lieutenant. "Bring a chair." "And some water?" The lieutenant looked confused. "Sir? She has been waiting in space for 3 weeks. The least we can do is give her somewhere to sit while she waits for an answer." He looked at Wren. "We are not monsters. We never were. That was the whole point." Ren sat in the chair they brought. She drank the water slowly, and she waited. On the other side of human space, Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of the final word and reviewed the messages coming in from Border Station 7 Commander. Giho's report was detailed and honest. He described Ren's arrival, her apology, the data crystal with the Council's offer. He also described the children on the refugee ships. Yuna had been a soldier her whole life. She had learned to follow orders, to put duty above feeling, to do what was necessary even when it was hard. But she had also learned something else during her years of service. Sometimes the hardest thing was not fighting. It was choosing not to. She opened a channel to human leadership. This is Captain Yuna of the Final Word. I am transmitting a report from the border. The aliens are dying. Their leaders have apologized and offered us everything we ever asked for. The question now is what we do with that offer. She paused, choosing her words carefully. They are ready to listen. Are we ready to speak again? In the refugee ships outside Border Station 7, a young alien girl named Tarn was trying to sleep. It was hard. The ship was cold, and the food had run out 2 days ago. Her mother had died when the swarm took their planet. Her father had died on the journey here. Now she was alone, looked after by strangers who had nothing left themselves. She was 8 years old. Through the window of the ship, it was bright and warm and safe. Everything the galaxy was not. She wondered what the humans were like. Her mother had told her stories about them. They were small, her mother said. Soft, but they worked hard and never gave up. They helped people, even people who did not help them back. Tarn did not understand why the humans had left. She did not understand politics or history or the weight of 200 years of being ignored. She only knew that she was hungry and scared and alone. Please, she whispered to the stars. Please help us. She did not expect an answer. Nobody had answered for 3 years. But somewhere in human space, her whisper was heard. Commander Jiho found her 2 days later. He had received new orders. Not to open the border. Not to let everyone in, but to save the children. All of them. Every child on every refugee ship would be brought to human space. Fed, sheltered, and cared for. Tarn was the first one through. Jiho knelt down to her level as she stepped off the transport. She was small, even for a child. Her clothes were torn, and her eyes were too old for her face. Hello, he said gently. My name is Jiho. You are safe now. Tarn looked at him with confusion. Why? She asked. My people ignored your people. My mother said so. She said we were wrong. Why are you helping me? Jiho thought about the question. He thought about his grandmother and Ambassador Tai Wu and all the years of being invisible. He thought about the orders he had followed and the ones he had questioned. He thought about what it meant to be human, because we remember what it is like to be alone, he said finally. And because helping people who need help is who we are. It is who we have always been. Even when nobody noticed, Tarn did not fully understand. But she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt hope. On the observation deck, Counselor Ren watched the children being brought to safety. Tears were running down her gray face. Thank you, she whispered. Jiho stood beside her. Do not thank me yet. The children are safe. But the rest of your people are still out there, and we have not decided what to do about them. Ren nodded. I understand. But this is a start. This is more than we deserved. Yes, Jiho agreed. It is. Remember that. Walked away, leaving her alone with the stars and the hope that maybe, just maybe, the silence was beginning to end. 5 years after humanity left, President Doyon stood before the Assembly of Worlds. The Assembly was the governing body of united humanity, representatives from every human colony, every station, every ship. They had gathered here on the oldest human colony in space to make the most important decision in their history. Doyon was 52 years old. He had gray hair and kind eyes and hands that were steady even when his heart was not. He had been elected on a promise of wisdom, not anger, of thinking about the future, not dwelling on the past. Now, He had to keep that promise. "You've all seen the reports," he said. "The galaxy is dying. Billions have already perished. Billions more will follow unless something changes. The Council has offered us everything we ever wanted. Equal partnership. A voice that matters. An apology written into law." He paused and looked at the faces before him. The question is simple. Do we go back? The debate had been raging for weeks. Everyone had an opinion. The assembly was divided in ways that went deeper than politics. A representative from the outer colonies stood up. She was young and angry and spoke for many who felt the same way. Why should we help them? They ignored us for 200 years. They let our people starve while they counted their wealth. They called us unremarkable. Let them burn in the silence they gave us. Cheers from some parts of the assembly, but not all. An older representative stood next. He was from one of the first colonies, a place that remembered the early days when humans were new to space and needed help from alien species. "We did not build this civilization alone," he said. "In the beginning, others helped us. They shared technology. They taught us how to survive in space. We owe a debt. A debt." The young woman replied. "They collected that debt 10 times over with their cruelty. Then are we no better than them? We complained that they ignored our kindness. If we ignore their suffering now, what does that make us?" The debate continued. Hours passed. Voices rose and fell. Arguments repeated and evolved. The assembly could not agree. Finally, President Doyon called for silence. "There is someone who wishes to speak," he said. "Someone who has earned that right more than anyone else in this room." The doors opened, and Elder Taiwu walked in. He was old now. Very old. His hair was completely white, and he moved slowly, supported by a cane. But his eyes were clear, and when he reached the speaking platform, his voice was strong. "I was the one who walked away," he said. 5 years ago, I stood in the council chamber and decided that I had heard enough. Enough dismissal. Enough disrespect. Enough of being invisible. I walked out, and I gave the order that started all of this." The assembly was silent. "I do not regret that decision. We needed to leave. We needed to show them what they had lost. We needed to prove to ourselves and to them that we mattered. And we did." The galaxy learned. They learned that the furniture they ignored was actually holding up the roof. He paused. "But spite is not who we are. It was never who we were. For 200 years, we built their stations and healed their sick and guarded their borders. Not because they thanked us, not because they noticed, but because it needed doing. Because we saw suffering and could not look away. Because helping others was written into our very souls." His voice grew softer. "I walked away because I was tired. But I have had 5 years to rest. 5 years to watch the stars and tend my garden and think about what humanity means. And I have realized something." He looked at the assembly with eyes full of hard-won wisdom. "If we let them die when we could save them, we do not hurt them. We hurt ourselves. We become the cold, uncaring species they always thought we were. We prove them right. And we lose something precious. Something that made us special, even when they could not see it." Taiwu straightened as much as his old body would allow. "Say we go back. Not for them. For us. Because returning to help those who hurt us is harder than abandoning them. And humanity has never chosen the easy path." He bowed to the assembly and stepped down. The vote was held that night. It was close. Closer than anyone expected. But when the count was finished, humanity had made its choice. They would return. Admiral Sujin had spent 5 years preparing for war. Now she prepared for something harder. Her fleet was the largest humanity had ever assembled. 300 ships crewed by men and women who had trained for this moment without knowing if it would ever come. They waited at the border, engines ready, weapons powered, but they would not fire a single shot. "All ships," Sujin announced. "This is Admiral Sujin. Our mission is rescue. Our target is the Villani homeworld system. The swarm has overrun their defenses, and their last survivors are trapped on the moon colonies. We will break through, establish a safe corridor, and evacuate everyone we can. She looked at the star map. At the massive swarm creatures between her fleet and the people they were going to save. 5 years ago, we left because they would not listen to us. Today we return because we have decided to speak anyway. Not with words, with actions. We will show them what humanity means. We will show them who we have always been, she gave the order. All ships, advance. The battle was brutal. The swarm was vast and hungry, and they threw themselves at the human fleet with mindless fury. Ships were damaged. Some were destroyed. Lives were lost, but humanity did not stop. They pushed through the swarm like a blade through darkness. Human engineers worked miracles, keeping damaged ships flying when they should have been debris. Human pilots flew with skill and courage that no algorithm could match. Human soldiers held the lines while refugees boarded transports. And when the last survivor was aboard, when the fleet began its retreat through the corridor they had carved, the Villani looked at their rescuers with new eyes. These were the unremarkable species, the ones they had ignored, the ones who did the invisible work. These were the ones who had come back to save them. 3 months later, the new Galactic Council met for. The first time, the chamber was different. Now, smaller. Many species had been wiped. Out by the swarm, the ones who remained sat in a circle that finally meant what it was supposed to mean. And in the center of that circle, for the first time in history, sat a human Captain Yuna, represented humanity at this first session. She wore her uniform without pride or shame. She sat in her chair like she belonged there, because she did. "We are here to rebuild," High Arbiter Dole said. He was very old now, and everyone knew he would not live much longer. But he had insisted on being present for this moment. "We are here to create something new, something better. And we are here to say, officially and eternally, that we were wrong." He turned to Yuna. "Humanity. We treated you as less than you were. We ignored your contributions. We dismissed your value. We were blind and foolish and cruel. And when the darkness came, you returned anyway. You saved us when we did not deserve to be saved." He bowed his head. "Thank you. We will not forget again." Yuna accepted the apology with a simple nod. "We did not return because you deserved it," she said. "We returned because we decided who we wanted to be. But we accept your thanks, and we will hold you to your promise." In the rebuilt capital, a new academy had been established. Young people from every surviving species came to learn together, to study together, to build together. Tarn was among them. She was 13 now, no longer a frightened child on a refugee ship. She had grown tall and strong, raised by human foster parents who loved her as their own. She spoke 3 languages, including Human Standard. She wanted to be an engineer. On the first day of the academy, she walked through the entrance hall and stopped. There was a statue there. It showed a human hand reaching down to lift another hand upward. 2 species helping each other, the way it should have been from the beginning. The inscription at the base was simple. "We returned not because you deserved it, but because we decided who we wanted to be." Tarn stood there for a long time, reading those words, remembering the commander who had knelt to her level and told her she was safe, remembering the parents who had taken her in when her own were gone, remembering all the humans who had helped her, not because they had to, because they chose to. A human girl walked up beside her. She was the same age as Tarn, with dark hair and curious eyes. "That is my favorite statue," the girl said. "My grandmother helped design it. Who is your grandmother?" Her name was Yuna. She was a captain. She used to say that the hardest battles are the ones you fight inside yourself. The choice to be kind when you could be cruel. The choice to help when you could walk away. Tarn looked at the statue again, at the 2 hands reaching for each other. "She sounds wise." She was. The girl smiled. "I am Minji. Do you want to be friends?" Tarn smiled back. It was strange. For so long, she had been afraid of humans. Her people had taught her that they were beneath her. Now she knew the truth. Humans were not beneath anyone. They never had been. They had simply been waiting for the galaxy to realize it. Yes, Tarn said. I would like that. They walked into the academy together, two children from different species, heading toward a future that their grandparents could never have imagined. Behind them, the statue stood in the sunlight, its message written for all to see. The galaxy had trembled when humanity left, but it was rebuilt when humanity returned, and it would never forget the lesson of the silent exit. Never again.